had been kind of an atheist their entire life, didn't really believe nothing. And he kind of goes through some tribulations and some things that happens in his life, and he ends up finding, a higher power. And he cannot control the excitement, so he's telling his coworkers and his employees and people, around him basically just cannot contain it. How excited he is. And he goes and starts telling everybody, and one of the last people he tells is somebody, who he thought he was kind of close with. And so he's telling the story of how he got here, and he looked over, and the guy that he was telling the story to, had this weird kind of grin. And it was almost like that type of grin where, you almost don't believe him, but he said it didn't look like a normal grin. Like, the facial features were exaggerated. And he keeps talking, he keeps looking over, and he starts to notice that this guy's face, who he'd been working with for years, started to morph. And he didn't recognize him, but it was him. It was the guy, but the facial features did not look like him. And he said that he noticed that his voice started to change as well. And he was kind of like, man, this is, in his head, he's like, man, he's talking, and he's like, man, this is kind of crazy. Like, what's going on? So then he ends up, kind of in the name of Jesus, and basically, at a certain point, this guy doesn't look like anything like his guy his coworker, and so he says, in the name of Jesus, you tell me your name. And the guy that's that's kind of weird, like his face is changing and stuff, says in this kind of this raspy, otherworldly voice, and said skepticism. And I thought that was crazy. I was like, what? And the guy that's telling me the story, he's like, man, I couldn't quite put into words what happened, like what I saw and heard. So once he did that, he said this, whatever this thing is, says skepticism, and then the guy that I guess it's using him slumps in the chair and closes his eyes and looks down, and then looks back up, and he's like normal again. And the guy that's telling me the story said, hey man, are you all right? And the guy's like, no. He's like, I don't even know where I'm at. What am I doing in your office? Like, what's going on? Like, I don't even know. So he's so confused and scared, he runs out of the office and is trying to grasp where he was at, because last thing he remembered, he was somewhere else in the facility. And he comes back, he's like, man, I don't know what happened. What were we talking about?